The crystals seemed to shatter in slow motion. Not glass, not a physical thing, but the air itself, vibrating with a shockwave that began at the center of the ballroom floor and spread outwards, freezing every smiling face, every lifted glass, every movement in time. It was the moment the music died. Not faded, but cut off, a violent silence that clawed at your eardrums after the joyful swell of the waltz. My daughter, radiant and beautiful in white, her new husband holding her close, their laughter still echoing in the sudden void. My husband, standing a few feet away, microphone in hand, a smug, sickeningly familiar expression on his face. And beside him, Sarah. The air thickened, tasting of perfume and betrayal. He looked not at our daughter, whose wedding reception he was interrupting, but at Sarah. He lowered the microphone, his gaze fixed on her, and I saw the small velvet box appear in his other hand. The world outside that frozen circle ceased to exist. There was only him, Sarah, the box, and the horrific dawning comprehension in my own mind, a comprehension so profound it felt like a physical blow. My breath left me. I couldn't blink, couldn't swallow. The silence stretched, taut and unbearable, filled only by the frantic, silent beating of my own heart and the collective, stunned gasp of 300 people. He opened the box. A diamond glittered under the soft lights of the chandelier, a cold, hard promise offered to a woman who is not his wife, at his daughter's wedding. If you feel like you're holding your breath right now, wondering what happens next, you understand what this feels like. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It genuinely helps me share these stories that need to be told. It seems like a lifetime ago, the woman I was before that moment. She was comfortable, maybe a little naive, maybe a little complacent. My life revolved around our daughter, Emily. Her school, her friends, her dreams. And then, planning her wedding. It consumed me, in the best possible way. Every detail, every floral arrangement, every song choice felt like building a future, not just for her, but for us, our family. Our home, nestled on a quiet street with old oak trees, felt like a sanctuary. Mark and I had been married for 28 years. 28 years. It's a number that sounds solid, unbreakable. Like granite. Like the foundation of that house we built together, brick by brick. We had our routines, our comfortable silences, our shared history. Or what I thought was shared history. He traveled a lot for work, executive level, finance. Long hours, late nights, trips to other cities. I accepted it. It was his career, how he provided for us. I filled my days with community work, my garden, and increasingly, wedding preparations. There wasn't much passion left, maybe. Not the fiery kind that marks the beginning. But there was affection, respect, companionship. A quiet understanding. I believed in the bedrock of our marriage, the kind built on years of shared moments, big and small. The kind that survives the ebb and flow of life. I was looking forward to our daughter being settled, maybe us finding a new rhythm, just the two of us, after the whirlwind of the wedding. A new chapter. I honestly believed that. The first crack appeared subtly. A late-night text message alert on his phone, left carelessly on the kitchen counter. Not the content, just the sender. A name I didn't recognize. Sarah. It pinged again moments later. Then a third time. I didn't pick up the phone. It felt wrong. An invasion. But the name stuck. Sarah. A colleague? A client? He never mentioned a Sarah. He was usually quite transparent, dropping names casually. Sarah didn't fit anywhere. A few days later, a receipt for a dinner for two at a restaurant I knew was expensive, and definitely not on his usual business travel route. The date was from a week he'd supposedly been in Chicago, staying at a specific hotel he'd told me about. This receipt was local. He dismissed it as a client dinner, forgotten to expense. The explanation felt thin, like cheap paper tearing. The unease began to settle in my stomach, a cold, foreign object. It wasn't just suspicion, it was the subtle shift in the atmosphere when he was home. He was distracted, checking his phone more, his eyes a little distant. He'd always been present when he was home, fully there. Now it felt like a part of him was somewhere else. My garden started to feel less like a sanctuary and more like a place to hide, to dig in the dirt and try to bury the sprouting anxiety. I tried to ignore it at first, blamed the wedding stress, my imagination running wild. But the little things accumulated. A scent on his jacket that wasn't mine, wasn't laundry detergent. The way he flinched when I touched his arm unexpectedly. The late-night phone calls he'd taken to study, closing the door, speaking in a low voice. The name Sarah started appearing more frequently in overheard snippets, hushed and quick. The quiet understanding between us began to feel like a chasm. I felt myself withdrawing, watching him from a distance, trying to piece together the puzzle. It was a lonely, isolating time. You're married, but you feel utterly alone with your fears. The silence in the house grew heavier, not comfortable anymore, but loaded with unspoken words. Every question I wanted to ask felt too big, too dangerous. Because once you ask, you can't unask. And I was terrified of the answer. Terrified of shattering that comfortable, familiar reality, even if it was already cracking. Then one evening he came home late, much later than usual. He smelled of expensive perfume and something else, something I couldn't place, but it felt illicit. He looked tired, but also animated, a jittery energy I hadn't seen in years. He walked straight past me, offering a quick, dismissive kiss on the cheek that didn't land properly. He mumbled something about a difficult meeting running over. But his eyes wouldn't meet mine. As he showered, his phone rang on the bedside table. This time, I didn't hesitate. The name Sarah flashed on the screen. My hand trembled as I picked it up. Before I could even decide what I was doing, a message popped up. Can't wait for the wedding. Our moment is coming. My blood ran cold. The wedding? Our moment? It wasn't just an affair. This was connected to Emily's wedding. The horror was suffocating. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a desecration of the one thing that mattered most to me. He was planning something, using our daughter's most important day. My fear turned to a cold, hard anger. I knew, in that instant, that I couldn't just confront him. I had to know everything. And I had to protect Emily. This wasn't about saving my marriage anymore. It was about survival and damage control. I wasn't just a wife. I was a mother tiger, sensing a threat to her cub. I put the phone down, wiped the screen clean with my sleeve, and walked away. The silence in the house wasn't heavy anymore. It was watchful. And so was I. Gathering proof became my second full-time job, right after wedding planning. Every trip he took, I'd check his hotel receipts, airline miles. Every late night, I discreetly check his call logs online. I found burner phones, burner email accounts. Layers upon layers of deception. Sarah's name appeared everywhere, linked to hotel bookings, restaurant reservations, sometimes even airline tickets booked for the same destination but separate flights. It was sickeningly methodical. He wasn't just having a casual affair. He was building a parallel life. A life that intersected with mine in the most painful ways. I started looking into Sarah. Online searches revealed she was a marketing executive at a rival firm. Younger, polished, ambitious. Her social media was carefully curated, professional achievements, glamorous trips, fitness posts. Nothing personal, nothing that hinted at a hidden life. But I found things connected to her business that raised red flags. Little inconsistencies, strange transactions. It took hours, days, weeks of painstaking research. Late nights hunched over my laptop after long days of finalizing seating charts and cake flavors. It was a surreal duality, immersing myself in the joy and hope of a wedding while simultaneously digging through the rot of my marriage. The emotional toll was immense. I couldn't talk to anyone. How could I? Oh, just picking out linens for Emily's wedding, also gathering evidence my husband is a serial liar. It wasn't exactly light conversation. I smiled, I nodded. I went to fittings, I tasted food, all while this dark secret festered inside me. I felt like an actress in my own life, playing the part of the happy mother of the bride, while the real me was a detective in a noir film, following a trail of breadcrumbs that led straight to heartbreak. Sleep became a luxury I rarely afforded myself. My dreams were a chaotic mashup of wedding bells and whispered lies. I lost weight. My eyes were permanently shadowed, but I covered it all with makeup and forced cheerfulness. The wedding day dawned, bright and deceptively beautiful. The house was a hive of activity: bridesmaids, hairstylists, makeup artists, photographers. Emily was a vision, calm and happy, surrounded by her friends. Mark was present. He played the part of the proud father well. Too well. He smiled, he posed for pictures, he made jokes. But his eyes still had that distant look, that flicker of something hidden. And I knew Sarah was there. I'd seen her name on a guest list I'd discreetly checked. She was a business associate. My stomach churned. He had invited his mistress to our daughter's wedding. It wasn't just arrogance. It was a profound lack of empathy, a calculated cruelty that chilled me to the bone. I watched him interact with guests, watched him steal glances towards the back of the room, scanning faces. I saw her arrive eventually, blending into the crowd in a tasteful but striking dress. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Poised. Confident. She caught his eye from across the room, and a silent communication passed between them, a flicker of something intimate that made my skin crawl. It was happening just as the text message had warned. The wedding was the stage. The ceremony was beautiful. Perfect. Tears streamed down my face, tears of joy for Emily, yes, but also tears of grief for the life I was losing, the future I had believed in that was crumbling around me. I stood there, beside the man who had betrayed me so completely, and held his hand for the photographs, a perfect picture of a happy family unit. The hypocrisy was a physical weight in my chest. I wanted to scream, to run, to shatter the illusion. But I held it together. For Emily, this was her day. Nothing, not his cruelty, not her presence, would steal her joy. Not yet. My plan was set. It had to be executed at the right moment. A moment that would cause the maximum impact on them, while minimizing the damage to Emily. It was a delicate balance, walking the tightrope between justice and devastation. Every smile I gave, every polite conversation I had, felt like a lie. My body was here, celebrating, but my mind was a battlefield, strategizing, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. I felt like a bomb ticking down, counting the minutes until I had to detonate. The reception began. The music was festive, the food delicious, the wine flowing. Laughter filled the room. Emily and her husband had their first dance, a picture of pure happiness. My heart swelled with love for her and a fierce protectiveness. She deserved this joy, this perfect day. And he was planning to ruin it. He was mingling, playing the host. I saw him talking to Sarah, a little too close, a little too long. My hands clenched under the table. The cold object in my stomach grew larger, heavier. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. This was about his audacity. To choose this day, this place, surrounded by everyone who loved Emily, to make a move with his mistress. It was an act of supreme arrogance, a deliberate cruelty that went beyond simple infidelity. It was a statement. A statement that he no longer cared about me, about our marriage, about the sanctity of this family moment. It was a power play. And in that moment, watching him laugh with her, seeing the way she looked at him, admiringly, possessively, something inside me hardened. The hurt was still there, a dull ache beneath the surface, but it was overshadowed by a cold, relentless determination. He wanted to make a scene? He wanted to declare his new life? Fine. But he wouldn't get to control the narrative. He wouldn't get to walk away unscathed, having blown up my life and Emily's day without consequence. This was not going to be his triumphant exit. This was going to be his reckoning. The plan solidified. I knew exactly what I needed to do, and when. The timing had to be perfect. After the main dances, before the party really got going. When everyone was still watching, still receptive, but the initial formality had passed. My hand trembled as I reached into my clutch, touching the cool, smooth surface of the small USB drive I carried there. Everything was on that drive. Everything. He stood there, microphone in hand, The music silent, the room frozen in anticipation. His eyes on Sarah, that sickeningly smug look on his face. My daughter, her smile faltering, confusion clouding her eyes. The air was thick, waiting. He said her name. Sarah, his voice echoed slightly in the sudden quiet. We've built something special, haven't we? A murmur rippled through the crowd. People exchanged confused glances. What was he doing? This was Emily's wedding speech slot. This was supposed to be a toast to the happy couple, maybe a fond anecdote from Emily's childhood. Not this. He took a step towards Sarah, reaching for her hand. She smiled, a radiant, expectant smile. Oh, she knew. She knew exactly what was happening. My stomach twisted. He was doing it. Here. Now. He got down on one knee. The gasp was louder this time, a collective intake of breath from 300 people witnessing something they couldn't quite process. Emily's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. Her husband looked bewildered, then angry. My own daughter, seeing her father on his knee, not before her, not offering her a blessing, but before his mistress, in her wedding dress, on her day. The pain on her face was unbearable. It was a knife twisting in my gut. He held the small velvet box open. The diamond flashed. Sarah, he said again, his voice louder, clearer now, projecting to the stunned crowd. Will you marry me? The silence that followed wasn't just quiet, it was deafening. A void where sound should be, filled instead with the frantic scrambling of people's minds trying to make sense of the unthinkable. Gasps turned into whispers, whispers into murmurs that rose in volume, a confused, shocked buzz. All eyes were on Mark and Sarah, frozen in that tableau, him on one knee, her hand over her mouth, feigning surprise, but I saw the triumph in her eyes. And then everyone looked at me, the wife, the mother of the bride, standing there, alone, watching her husband of 28 years propose to another woman at their daughter's wedding. I felt their pity, their shock, their embarrassment. It was a physical pressure, pushing down on me. My legs felt like lead, my heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The moment. The crisis point. I could collapse. I could run. I could scream. Or I could act. My gaze shifted from Mark and Sarah to Emily. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face, her husband holding her tightly, glaring at her father. Her perfect day was dissolving into a grotesque spectacle. That image, my daughter's heartbreak, was the catalyst. The hurt, the shock, the embarrassment, they all receded, replaced by a cold, unwavering resolve. He chose this battlefield. He chose this moment. And now he would face the consequences. My hand tightened around the small clutch, around the USB drive inside. This wasn't about vengeance, it was about damage control. About protecting what was left, starting with Emily's dignity and her future. My future. I started walking, one foot in front of the other, towards the center of the room, towards them. It felt like walking through water, slow and resistant. The murmuring died down as people saw me moving. The air crackled with anticipation. Mark looked up, startled, still on his knee. Sarah's triumphant smile wavered, replaced by a flicker of apprehension. They hadn't anticipated this. They'd anticipated my tears, my breakdown, my panicked retreat. Not this. Not me, walking deliberately towards them, a calm, determined expression on my face that felt alien even to myself. I reached the edge of the small space they occupied, the space that had just become the stage for their public declaration. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The microphone was still on the floor beside Mark. I just spoke, clearly, calmly, my voice cutting through the residual tension in the room. Mark, I said. My voice sounded steady. Too steady. Get up. He hesitated for a moment, looking confused, then slowly rose to his feet, the ring box still in his hand. Sarah stood beside him, her eyes darting nervously between him and me. The silence returned absolute this time. Every single person in the room was watching. You chose a dramatic moment, I continued, my gaze fixed on his face. There was no emotion there now, just a blank confusion, a dawning fear. He didn't understand why I wasn't screaming, why I wasn't shattered. To propose to Sarah? He opened his mouth, perhaps to say something conciliatory, something dismissive, something to regain control of the narrative he'd intended. But I didn't let him. But before Sarah answers, I said, turning my gaze to her. Her apprehension was growing, her smile completely gone. There's something she needs to see. Something she needs to understand about the man she's considering marrying. I reached into my clutch, my fingers closing around the small USB drive. I pulled it out, holding it up for everyone to see. It looked insignificant, a tiny piece of plastic and metal. But I knew the power it held. The power to unravel everything they had built on lies and betrayal. Mark's eyes widened in alarm. He knew what it was. Or he had a very good idea. He took a step towards me, a frantic look on his face. "What are you doing?" he hissed, his voice low, urgent. "Don't you dare." I ignored him. My focus was on Sarah. "Sarah," I said again, my voice still calm, though the effort was immense. "You're a successful businesswoman. Ambitious. I did some research on you. Admirable." In many ways, a ripple of surprise went through the crowd. Why was I talking about Sarah's career? You value success, financial security, a certain standard of living. I paused, letting that sink in. Sarah's expression was a mixture of confusion and growing dread. She still didn't know what I had, but she knew it wasn't good. "What my husband didn't tell you," I continued, speaking directly to her, isolating them together in that moment, "is that his success is built on very shaky ground. Ground that is about to collapse." Mark made a move towards me, reaching for the drive. "Give that to me." Emily's husband stepped forward, blocking Mark's path. "Don't touch her," he said, his voice steely. "Support." I felt a surge of gratitude. "I have proof here," I said, holding the drive higher, ignoring Mark's sputtering protests. "Proof of illegal activities. Fraud. Embezzlement. Money laundering. Not just in his company, but funneled through various shell corporations. Money he siphoned off for years. For trips, for gifts." My gaze flickered to Sarah's hand, the ring box still clutched by Mark. "For other expenses." The crowd gasped again, louder this time. The murmuring returned, a storm of shocked whispers. Fraud? Embezzlement? This was far beyond a simple affair. Sarah looked at Mark, her face paling. "What is she talking about?" she whispered, her voice sharp. "Nonsense." Mark blustered, finding his voice. "She's lying. She's unstable. She's trying to ruin me because of Sarah." "Am I?" I countered, my voice still quiet, but with an edge of steel. "I have documented transfers. Offshore accounts. Forged signatures. Communications with people the SEC has been investigating for months." I looked back at Sarah. "Do you know why he was so eager to leave his current company? He wasn't just looking for a better opportunity, Sarah. He was one step ahead of the federal investigators. He was planning to leave the country eventually, with the money he stole." Sarah stared at Mark, her eyes wide with horror. "Is this true?" she demanded, her voice trembling. The radiant expectancy was gone, replaced by fear and fury. Mark was visibly sweating now. It's complicated. Business things. She doesn't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said. "And I have made copies of everything. Distributed them. They are with my lawyer. They are also with the relevant authorities." I held up the drive again. "This is just for you, Sarah. A quick overview." I turned to the large screen set up for the wedding photos slideshow. A technician was standing nearby, frozen like everyone else. "Could you please put this on the screen?" I asked, holding out the drive. He hesitated for a moment, looking at Mark, then back at me. He nodded slowly and took the drive. The screen changed from a picture of Emily as a child to a stark, white background. Then, files began to appear. Financial statements, highlighted transactions, scanned documents, emails. I didn't need to explain them all. The titles were enough. Project Nightingale, offshore transfers, Cayman Holdings, wire details, correspondence, J. Rodriguez, SEC target. The room fell silent again, a heavy, oppressive silence this time. Sarah's face was a mask of disbelief and dawning realization. She wasn't just seeing proof of an affair. She was seeing proof that the man she was about to say yes to was a criminal, potentially dragging her down with him by association. I started investigating when I found out about the affair. I explained, my voice calm, narrative now, telling a story. But I quickly realized this wasn't just about personal betrayal. This was about protecting my family's future. The financial future he was stealing from. I looked at Sarah directly. He was planning a new life, Sarah. A life built on stolen money. Did you know he was planning to propose tonight?
To you?
Because he wasn't just leaving me. He was leaving everyone. He was planning to disappear. And maybe, just maybe, take you with him until you became a liability too. Sarah looked at Mark, really looked at him. The man on one knee holding a ring, the picture of romance moments ago, was now exposed as a thief, a con artist, a desperate man running from the law. His face was ashen, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape route that didn't exist. You were going to leave? Sarah stammered, her voice barely a whisper, the horror sinking in. The betrayal to her. He hadn't just lied to his wife. He'd built a relationship with Sarah on a foundation of lies, a foundation that was now crumbling around her. The glittering future she'd envisioned evaporated. Instead of becoming the trophy wife of a successful executive, she was standing next to a man whose life was about to be destroyed, possibly taking her reputation, her career, everything she'd worked for with it. Mark said nothing. He couldn't. His carefully constructed world had just imploded. Sarah looked down at the ring box in his hand, as if it were a poisonous spider. Her eyes, moments ago bright with anticipation, were now filled with cold fury and disgust. She looked back at me, and for a fleeting second, I saw something unexpected there. Not just anger, but a chilling echo of my own betrayal. She turned back to Mark, her voice suddenly strong, cutting through the silence. You are going to marry me with stolen money? She spat the words, her ambition, her self-preservation instantly overriding any feelings she might have had for him. And drag me into this mess? Are you insane? She slapped the ring box out of his hand. It clattered onto the polished dance floor, the diamond glinting mockingly. No, she declared, her voice ringing through the room. Absolutely not. I wouldn't marry you if you were the last man on earth. She took a step back, away from him, as if he were contaminated. This is over, Mark. You are insane. She turned and walked quickly away, straight out of the ballroom doors, leaving Mark standing alone, on the spot where he had planned his grand, public declaration of love. The silence returned, thick and heavy, but this time, it was filled with the weight of shock, not anticipation. Everyone stared at Mark, standing there defeated, the discarded ring box a damning testament to his failure. Emily rushed towards me, throwing her arms around me, sobbing into my shoulder. Mom, how? I held her tightly. It's okay, honey, I whispered, my voice finally breaking. It's okay. He didn't get to ruin your day. Not completely. Mark stood there for a long moment, the picture of a ruined man. His eyes met mine across the room. There was no smugness now, no arrogance. Just a desperate, defeated emptiness. He had tried to destroy my life in front of everyone, and instead, I had utterly demolished not just his marriage, but his freedom, his reputation, his carefully built facade. The plot he thought was a triumphant climax to his affair became the catalyst for his complete downfall. He hadn't just lost me. He had lost Sarah, his standing, and soon his liberty. He turned and walked out of the room, a solitary, pathetic figure. The party didn't immediately resume. People were still stunned, whispering, trying to process what they had just witnessed. But the central figures of the drama were gone. The air began to clear, slowly, piece by piece, like dust settling after an explosion. The rest of the night was a strange mix of residual shock and determined festivity. Emily, bless her heart, wiped her tears, and with the unwavering support of her new husband, decided that this man, her father, would not steal her joy. They rallied. Their friends rallied. The music started again, more tentatively this time, but then louder, more vibrant. Guests approached me, some with words of comfort, some with silent, sympathetic hugs, others just looking at me with wide-eyed awe. I accepted their condolences and congratulations with a quiet grace I didn't know I possessed. The immediate aftermath was surreal. Dealing with the logistics, security was called to escort Mark out discreetly. Sarah was already gone. The wedding planner, a seasoned professional, quietly adjusted the timeline, skipping the father-daughter dance, smoothing over the gaping wound in the evening. Emily and her husband, bless them, put on brave faces, focusing on each other, on their future. They cut the cake, they had their dances. For me, it was a blur. I moved through the motions, smiling when I needed to, nodding, accepting embraces. But internally, I was empty. The adrenaline that had fueled me through the past months, through the past hour, drained away, leaving behind a vast, echoing space. There was no triumph, not really. Just a profound sadness, a sense of closure built on destruction. I had won, yes. I had protected Emily, I had exposed him, and I had ensured Sarah didn't get the life she'd plotted for. He was facing prison. Sarah had walked away, her ambition likely saving her from being implicated, but her relationship with Mark was dead, and her image in the industry might be tainted by association. I had turned his public humiliation into his public downfall, and hers too. But the victory felt cold, hollow. It was a victory over wreckage. My marriage was over, irrevocably. The man I had loved, the father of my child, was a stranger, a criminal. My daughter had witnessed something horrific on her wedding day, something that would forever be a part of her memory of this day. It was a bittersweet, painful kind of justice. Sitting there, watching Emily dance with her husband, surrounded by the love of her friends and his family, I felt a sense of peace settle over me, fragile but real. I had done what I had to do. I had faced the worst, and I hadn't shattered. I had fought back, not with anger or hysteria, but with cold, calculated truth. And the truth, armed with evidence, had been a far more potent weapon than any outburst could have been. I had lost a husband, but I had saved myself, and in doing so, protected my daughter from being entangled in his destruction. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with legal battles and rebuilding, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't walking in the dark. I had turned the lights on, blindingly bright, exposing everything. And I was still standing, bent, perhaps, and irrevocably changed, but still standing on my own 2 feet, ready to face whatever came next. The weight in my chest was still there, a dull ache, but beneath it, a tiny spark of something new began to glow. Resilience, freedom, a quiet, determined hope for a future I would build myself, brick by painstaking brick, just like I built that house all those years ago. This time, the foundation would be solid, built on truth and my own strength. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to find strength you didn't know you had in the face of unimaginable betrayal, tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It helps support this channel and brings more stories like this to life. Thank you for being here.